You are listening to Eastmans Fly Cast, an adventure fly fishing specific podcast covering travel, tactics, and next level insight. Now your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Brand new episode of Eastman on the Fly. This will be episode number 3. So today I have on my good buddy Charlie Gordan. So I met Charlie a few years ago. I was building a fence for him. And we started talking and became friends, and we fished together and keep in touch throughout the year. He's raising a couple kids in the same valley that I'm raising my kids in, and so we just become friends, and he's extremely fishy. So I just had to get him on the podcast. He grew up fishing started fly fishing. I guess didn't start, but used to fly fish for Muskie back where he grew up. And then we get into moving to Montana. He's been guiding here on his local rivers for a handful of years and just super knowledgeable about these western rivers and loves to travel and fly fish. Just the perfect guest to have on. So this episode, Eastman's on the Fly. It's with Charlie Gordan. I'm your host, Brian Barney. Let's get this thing rolling. All right, I'm here with my buddy Charlie. Came over to the house. Man, I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a while. I finally arm wrestled you into it.
Yeah, it's exciting to be on this end of it.
Yeah,
it's
right?
different.
Yeah, well, you've listened to podcasts, a fan of them. We're living the dream out here in Montana. We live in the same town, Ennis, Montana, just out of it. Pretty nice place to make a living, isn't it?
Yeah, I was excited you're going to do a fishing thing. I've been dodging the hunting side, so I just don't get made fun of the whole time.
Whatever. Well, I think it's cool. I think you've immersed yourself in the hunting side of it and fallen in love with it. Like we were just talking hunting.
Yeah, we were talking hunting. It's hard not to talk hunting when you walk around this house.
Well, likewise, tough not to talk fishing when I'm around you. So guiding now over 100 days a year on the water, and then you're beating yourself up for not being on the water yourself enough. Gosh, you're on the water all the time.
Yeah, this is year 9 going in here, working down at the Slide Inn, and then first year getting my own outfitting license, which is exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. 87 days or 83 days my first year, and then 121 or something like that last year.
Oh my gosh, you pick up so much information and knowledge from just that many days on the water.
Yeah, it's cool running a river and getting to know it a lot.
Yep.
And then kind of learning the landscape and where all the water comes from in this area is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then every day off, you're fishing with Owen, your son, who's an animal on the fly rod already. Fishing still water, fishing with your wife Josie, with your family, and then fishing with buddies. Man, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me you fish 200 days a year.
Yeah, I've never counted it. I've never actually added up all the days. I've always wondered. It's nice when you're so close to everything. I mean, we can, I can pick the kids up at school and be on the water in 20 minutes after getting them from school. So it's pretty cool.
That was so nice. We'll probably be on the water after the podcast.
Yeah. We'll have to get up there and battle the breeze a little bit, but 'tis the season.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good right now, isn't it? And you just have the river to yourself, which is really nice. It's, for guys that travel out, like the really good hatches in the summertime are fun, but I also think this springtime fishing is really fun, with just not as many guys out doing it.
Oh, and it's so nice. You're just itching to get outside because of a long winter. And this one's been easy on us, but yeah, just not as many people. And I mean, you're surprised when you see 2 other boats at the ramp when you get there. And you're like, oh, man, there's other people out versus the summer when there's 35 to 40.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the tough things to catch fish on this river is there's so many good fishermen fishing this river day after day going down, putting their clients into good fish and themselves into good fish.
Yeah. There's definitely pressure in the right places, and then, kind of mixing it up. There's a lot of the people are being guided on this river. And I definitely think it ups the game. The people know where the fish are.
Mm-hmm. 9 seasons on this water. You had to learn a lifetime's worth of knowledge in 9 years on this river. Just trying to catch fish consistently. Because it's tough on this river, too. This river can kick your butt any given day, it seems like.
Yeah, for sure. The easiest way is pick out the color boats that you know do well, and then see where those guys go. That's like ups the learning curve nicely, or shortens the learning curve. But yeah, a couple of those boats know where they're going. And it's funny, you can see them off the highway in some places. Like I've seen your truck glassing off the highway in a few places, and I'm looking off in the distance like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, you're talking hunting features,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
When I'm pulled over looking at a hunting feature?
Yeah, it's all the same game.
Yeah. Well, it is. Those guys learn through years of experience, and sometimes you see somebody hook a fish in a spot, and it's like, oh, well, you take that to note that there was a fish in that spot. And I just don't think fish sit in spots on accident. They sit there because they like those spots. And the big trout, they sit in big trout spots, like the best water they can find. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we were talking about with the big bulls. Is like I find them by accident, but they're there for a reason.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's like me on Browns. Yeah, find them by accident every now and again.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you couldn't pick a better river to learn, but you didn't come from Montana, so you come from the eastern side, right?
Yeah, from the waters of the James, down in just off the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and grew up fishing a lot of smallmouth, some trout in some places, but you kind of have to drive for them. And then a few years before I got out here, started getting really into muskie fishing. And that was fun, throwing big flies at big predators in the river.
Wow. Yeah. Those muskies get huge too, right?
Yeah, it was fun. It was, like big browns, like low fish numbers, lots of casting, lots of looking. But then, yeah, when it all goes right, it's fun.
Oh, so they're a unicorn of a fish. So you'll spend days throwing at them different colors and things to get a bump.
Yeah, and then you'll think you figured it out, and then just randomly it'll just be on. And they're all over the boat. It's fun. You figure 8 every cast. So when you bring it in, you kind of keep a big fly under the water, under your boat, and then move it around in a figure 8 to keep it moving just to see if anything comes out. And sometimes, they'll be underneath your boat and then come out to hit a fly, and who knows how long they've been sitting there.
Oh, my God. The thrill and excitement level when you see one chasing your fly, because I know how it is, like sight casting, for trout or seeing them chase the streamer or even the salt for that matter. But to watch one of those fish right at the boat and have them as long as, as long as your leg or weighs as much as your leg chasing that thing, man, that's got to be wild.
Yeah, the biggest I measured on a fly was 47 inches. And that thing was awesome. She was big pre-spawn, just huge fish. Who knows? And I'm so bad with the poundage, but I would say, a comfortable 30.
And they're such an aggressive fish too, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when they want to be, it's like, it's just, they'll follow a fly and just nose it, follow, a big bait that someone's throwing and just kind of nose it. And it's just, they got to decide to eat at some point. They've got a really advanced metabolism versus like we were talking about northerns earlier. So versus the northern pike who just have to eat and eat and eat, a muskie will eat, a 3-pound sucker and won't eat for a couple days.
Oh, wow. Now, is a muskie a different species of fish?
Yeah, so they're in the Esox family.
Okay.
So you've got like your pickerel, your little ones like chain pickerel.
Okay.
And then your pike and then your muskie.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Do you go down shooting your shot out of a boat? Is that how you fish for them, or do you anchor up on big holes and throw them through there?
That's the game. Like how you were talking about your elk spots. When you get like a good spot, like they're going to be there again. And it's kind of the big mix. I'd say like when you find everything, you find kind of like a mud side, a rock side, a deep spot. You got some wood in there. It's like all of your features in one area. You just know they're going to be fish there.
Wow. Okay, and then big weighted leaders.
Same as the way that I fish streamers for trout here, like a weighted line.
Yep.
It's like a tungsten coated line. Pretty short leader, and then fishing metal with them so they don't bite through it. I went years without a bite through and had 2 bite throughs like in the same week. And, it was like and biting through 100-pound fluoro. And you don't even feel it.
Just gone.
Yeah, like you just see a fish and you're disturbed and you're like, this feels light. Yeah, and there's nothing there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they swallowed your fly. You took 2.5 hours to tie.
Nothing hurts worse than losing a fish or losing an opportunity. Or like, for any of those big fish, your knots are so key, or even for trout for that matter, making sure that your leaders aren't nicked, that your knots are all true. There's nothing worse than finally hooking your unicorn and having them come off or bust a hook or bust a leader. It's just the worst.
Yeah, I think it was kindergarten or first grade that my son was in. And it was like, your dad's career day. And he said his dad ties and unties knots for a living. And my wife was like, he does so much more. I was like, no, he's got it. Like, the kid knows me.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's wild fishing for those things. Would you ever find yourself like chasing northerns in Montana in different places?
I have. I haven't had great luck because I always go to the places and then see carp. And it's just like, I'm too ADD. It's like squirrel, and they're so easy, and they're right there. So I always end up carp fishing when I go hunting for northerns, but I've got a couple buddies that make me really jealous.
Man, I want to try that. Like, there's just, people find out about things. Like, we were talking about spots and how there's no more secrets, that anything good, there's guys doing it. But there's still so much opportunity to go find great fishing, like all over our state and all over the U.S., really.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what's so cool about like how we do stuff with drifting into places. I mean, there's just so many miles, that there are a lot more like sacrificial spots now that people that get out there and people will talk about, but there's definitely a whole lot of secrets. I bet you have more secrets than anyone else I know with the amount of time that you've spent in these hills. You told me about someone where talking about unicorns, where some of these huge cutthroat are in these high mountain lakes. That, man, that's like life goal for me to get to now.
Gosh, we should do it. Yeah, you're just so busy in the summertime.
Yeah.
Trying to make all your money in the summertime. That's the game out here.
Yeah, definitely. It's a tough time of year. I was looking at the like new SARS search and rescue cart that they have, and I was thinking if we rigged something up like that, you could push me up to one of those lakes. And I'm definitely down.
Whatever, you make it. You hike all over.
I don't know.
Man, yeah. So 9 seasons on the water. And all your free time is spent fishing. Like, you love fishing. So now it's just starting to target those bigger fish, looking for those opportunities to find those next level browns, which are really tough in these rivers. How many days do you spend to touch one of those big next level fish?
I saw so many my first year randomly in like these 2 fishing trips that we went to, like, the No Tell'em Creek that's way up. And I mean, we ran into 4 or 5 fish browns over 25 inches.
Wow.
And, I see one over 25 every couple years maybe. And it was just this one time that it was on. So, yeah, I've been kind of chasing the dragon with that. It was like one of my first fishing trips up here. And, man, it was just awesome. But, you hunt these conditions a lot. The cool thing about the time right now is spring, and you're really battling snowpacks and like melts, and coming here in the next like month and two months. So looking at water temperatures, looking at rising and falling waters, and it becomes really fun to try and get some of these fish in certain areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, the pressure's off a little bit. You can kind of hunt them a little bit more and take your time doing it. And, I guess nature conditions just dictate when it's going to be good or when it's going to be off the hook. And so right now is springtime fishing to these fish, but summertime is also fun. Like, I've seen more big fish come off some of those big hatches, those salmon fly, the hopper hatches. Like those are awesome. And even right now, going down the river, at any time you could see heads popping for midge in a spot and hop out with a dry fly and catch your first couple fish off a dry fly.
Yeah, I think that's such an overlooked thing. And I don't necessarily have the patience and the eyesight for it to do it a lot, but this as a winter midgery is unlike any place I've ever seen. If you want to go out and throw a 3 and a 4 weight, like you can get into a lot of fish.
Oh my gosh, some of those insides and soft water right now that they come in to eat those midge, it's just heads, and you think, like, sometimes I think, oh, it's just a bunch of small fish eating, and then I'll actually throw one in there in that soft water or whatever, and I'll tie into an 18 to 20 inch rainbow in there sipping midge, you know, and they're all like that stacked in there. But I think a lot of times they're sliding over and eating in those spots where you can't even fish to them with other bugs unless you're fishing that bug when they're on it.
Yeah, like sneaking up short cast, placed perfectly. And then while you're getting your 6-inch drift, there's 4 other eats, and you got to set the hook on the right eat that's on yours. And yeah, I'm horrible at it, but it is so fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not what I specialize in either or look for, but it's just part of being on the water and having everything tied up and adapting to the conditions that you're seeing.
For sure. Yeah, and upriver where it's still winter, it's pretty fun too, like post-holing in. Just getting to the river is kind of an adventure. My best fish, I guess it was 2 years ago, and we were streamer fishing, but it was in one of those Chinooks where you get those ice eater winds that come in. It was like right at the end of it, and we spent most of the day building a fire, and then swung through the run with big streamers like maybe 2 or 3 times, and get this monster 25, just gnarly old man, and it was cool.
Man, that's way cool. Yeah. It's good in there this time of year. I skied down in between the lakes once this year and got into there.
Nice.
And it was so good down in there. They weren't sitting in like a big hole all stacked in there like I think wintertime. They were just slid into all the little spots, and it was every spot I threw it, I'd pick up a trout in there. But yeah, that's also like where one of my biggest came from.
There was a big avalanche in there yesterday. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, it slid across the road at Quake.
Did it?
Yeah,
Okay.
It slid across into the lake. There's 2 huge trees, like, they're poking up that looks like they're growing out of the road.
Wow. Is that in those the slides that are already in there and open that come down to the road in there? There's a couple slides, not a new one, is it?
No, I forget what it's called, like right across from Hell's Canyon.
Yeah.
So yeah, like right when you leave like the slide zone. Yeah.
There's a lot of bears in those slides too up there.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen them in there?
I haven't, but I've heard so many stories about them being there.
Yeah. I saw a big one across the lake too, like a year ago. Big chocolate over there too.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them that run in there, but it's good fishing in there. I think one of my biggest fish came up there just by myself chasing the hatch, and I thought it was going to be lower on the river, and then I didn't see the bugs or the activity and went up between the lakes, and they were just flying everywhere, and it was like nobody was on the hatch, and I crossed the river, which is always a little sketchy in that section during high water, and got across to that other side, and yeah, I saw a flash, like he came up and tried to eat it and missed the bug, or I missed him or something. And so then I just sat there on the bank and I waited my diligent 10 minutes, like you're supposed to when you miss a fish, but you never do. You always just throw it back in there and then he doesn't eat and then you're ruined. But it was like such a big flash of a big brown that it was like, oh my God, I got to just sit here and wait. Just sat there and waited. And then 10 minutes later, I threw it in there and then he came up and ate it. And yeah, it was like one of those great big ones, like you're talking like a big 26-inch, And then right after that, I caught another rainbow that was all a 24, 25 out of the same pocket, but running up from that lake, sitting in there eating big bugs.
Yeah. Then did you go get your giant pancake?
No, I did not, but I should have. I got a good breakfast up there.
That's the best breakfast in Montana right there.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I missed the big pancake, but should have. But yeah, I mean, it's just funny, chasing those hatches. You have a section you want to fish, but it's like talking about adapting to the conditions. How much of your job is that? Thinking you're going to fish one thing for a day and getting out there and then adapting to either the hatch you see or what the fish are eating. How much of your job or how big of a part does that play?
Yeah, it's fun when you have the right clients that you can throw an audible with, and it's because everything's a roll of the dice. And it's if you can get in there and you kind of know that it's not happening, and it's someone that doesn't mind going a little bit later, doing something a little bit different. You never want to have to throw an audible, but sometimes it can be great. Sometimes mixing up the day into 2 floats, when the fishing's bad, can be a game changer.
Yeah.
Can really save you.
Man. Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, you almost team up and you're just fishing buddies for the day or for a few days or however many days you're teamed up.
Yeah.
You guys are trying to find fish, working together, and out of the boat, it's you on the sticks and the lines and making the calls for the bugs and the float and the whole deal and using your experience to try to get these guys into fish. But they also have to be all in, part of the team, want to play the game. It's got to be fun when you get the right guys to fish with.
Oh, it's awesome. And then you wind up with, lifelong buddies. Like the guy that I was going to introduce you to, ended up selling his business and moving out here and liking a different pace of life. and his wife and him are renting a small house on a river close to here. That's really cool. Been fishing with him for 8 years.
How
and,
cool.
Now he's basically a neighbor by Montana standards.
How cool. Well, and it's so smart, I think, when you come out west or anywhere fly fishing, like every river, all these river systems are different. They fish different. Like, gosh, I just think it's smart to go out to hire a guide for a day and just like, not like you're looking for the spots or to fish that exact run that he took you, but you're looking for the techniques, what they're biting on. You gain so much experience and knowledge just fishing with a guy like that for a day that knows that river so well. So if you're on a week-long vacation, getting a couple guide days in front or a guide day in front, it's just you're gonna have a better overall experience, and you get the price of that guide day back. And I know I do that when I'm fishing salt. Like, I don't know salt that well, you know, and so I go with guys that do, and I'll pay a guide day, and then I'll wade for the next few days, and I know the bug and what it needs to look like or what it looks like when it does happen. But I just think it's super smart, even for guys coming out west, because you can do it on your own. You just need time on the water. You need to get your butt kicked a day or two, tap into what's happening, but you just advance that learning curve so quick when you go with somebody that knows the river so well, like you.
I think an important thing too around here in places that, everybody's read the things about overcrowding and the different times, is with a guide, and hopefully it's the right guide, you can learn a lot in etiquette in the area and kind of how things go smoothly. So like, we have a bunch of people that'll come in and fish with us, and they live in the area, and they're just not that comfortable like getting their own boat into the rodeo, and they'll come with us a bunch and kind of see how it works, see how like kind of what the etiquette is on pulling anchor out in front of someone.
That's a good point. Yeah. So etiquette, like you just said, pulling an anchor out or pulling out in front of somebody is really rude. You should wait for that boat to go through. What's some of the other etiquette on like these rivers out here?
A big thing, just giving people space, and everyone's going to do things a little bit differently, but like, it's interesting how it's changed from like that, the old school kind of like one generation before I got here, 2 generations before I got here. Either it was very frowned upon to hit rocks and to get out of the boat, hold on a rock while clients hit it and keep working it, because that's affecting the flow of the other boats that are going to be coming through behind you. And that one's that's not even accepted anymore. Mm-hmm. But just kind of things like that, like keeping the flow. If it is a busy place, like there's plenty of it out there. It's the same thing as showing up to a hunting spot, and while you're getting ready, another 2 cars come in, or vice versa. You're the car behind other people. It's like, and I have friends that get mad at me for it, but I always kind of walk over and I'm like, hey, which way were you guys planning on going? And just to try and figure something out. And it's the same deal. It's like, well, I mean, the number one, don't rig something on the ramp. Like, if you have a boat, stay away from the ramp while you get ready. And
just get in there and take care of your business, right? Dump your boat or pick it up or whatever you need to do.
The time spent on the ramp is minimal, like the least amount that you can. Don't block other people with your boat. And that's the one that's going to get you yelled at, and then, pulling on anchor people too close and things like that.
Well, I know we made a trip steelheading. In fact, we're talking about going again here and planning another trip, either steelheading or trout fishing somewhere. But that's the etiquette when you're fishing steelhead, is there's multiple people in that hole, but you got like a reality of that, like high pressure, how many people were fishing for steelhead when we were down there.
Yeah, that was a different world.
You can't pull down below boats. You can't low hole them. You got to park above them and scoot down. But then people start to cycle holes, and they want to, fish down through going out of the boat because it's a long run. So then you just have to get in with that rotation of it's wild.
Dude, that was so crazy. And then like we're in that, and I it's hard to like know what to call it without using a derogatory term. But like we're in that where it's just boats like rotating through, and I think 3 other gear boats and us throwing flies. And what was your fish? It was like a 40 or 42 inch buck. Like just this monster of a fish came out on the fly rod. Like the biggest one we saw anyone catch. That was super cool.
Oh, man.
I was glad to have you there.
They just like that. They like that dead drift, and I love catching them on the swing too. But, man, steelhead love to eat on a true dead drift down through there. And I think the fly rod gets a better wash than the gear rod does. The gear rod's a shorter leader and straight down to the weight, and it just kind of flows down with the float, and they don't really nip, where, we fish these long leaders that just wash down below. But, yeah, they sure like to eat those things. But, yeah, that was a great big buck and gave me just the fight of my life, too, out there. And that's not how all steelheading is. It's part of fishing is having your own experience and getting away from them. And we did float down where there was no other boats and went and caught steelhead down below, too. At least one or two we hooked down there.
Yeah, definitely. Here on the Madison or where I'll wind up with clients, I always say it's like a wilderness experience. And it's nice to get that wilderness experience still. Mm-hmm. And that first day of steelheading was none of that. But, man, did we get into them. And that was actually my first time ever doing that. And I was, had the grandeur ideas of swinging flies to them and stuff. And then we're watching where they are. And those fish were 15 to 7 feet down, just hugging the bottom. It was interesting for sure.
Yeah. Those rivers, yeah, and those are some of the rivers they have in Idaho, which is just, it's a good opportunity for us 5-6 hours away to go experience it and get into them. But, yeah, where it's really at, that Pacific Northwest and on the ocean front and all those native fish down there. So, yeah, we got to get you out there and on a raft or on a drift boat out there. That's the true experience.
Yeah, for sure. I need to head west more. Mm-hmm. Definitely. I've done plenty to the east.
Yeah. There's just like you say, there's still so much good fishing out there. I have so many spots I want to hit, even in my own state. But
well, I said that we're talking about doing a 4-hour drive to the east where it's been 70 degrees. It was 72 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
That sounds pretty nice right now.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, head out there. The fishing's pretty good this time of year.
Yeah, it's such a cool spot that we're in because, literally you drive, 4 hours in any direction and you're in a completely different area, totally different topography, different climate. Mm-hmm. It's wild.
Well, and so many great river systems right around us. I need to explore them more, but, you're also doing some rivers that, there's a lot of rivers around here that don't have the stamp like the Madison does that still hold really good fish and really good fly fishing out there. And I've got a few of those rivers too and floats that I do that are within an hour of our place right here, but nobody floats down there, fishes to them. Maybe they don't have the population. You got to fish a little bit harder, but there's still some great fishing out there, isn't there?
I call them all the Upper Missouri. They all kind of flow in that direction. Yeah, it's really cool, and the different animal populations and everything, where you'll run into the bighorn, where you'll run into the moose. It's really cool.
Yeah, moose, whitetail, ducks, and birds, and you're just It is a really cool experience that you can get that far back into places by floating down the river, isn't it? Just the places where you pull over your boat and then you're sitting with this run all to yourself, but you have the national forest behind you or whatever, birds chirping. You're like, man, I don't think I want to be anywhere else on planet Earth right now. It's pretty nice.
I know. It's funny. It's funny in this state how little I use the jet boat that I have for what it was intended to and what I purchased it for, which is running up rivers. But it's man, there's just such good floating everywhere around here. Mm-hmm. I end up using that boat on lakes, but back east anywhere, that was the tool, the tool to get away from everybody else.
Man, so you've got that jet boat set up too. So you, I notice you're floating the rivers quite a bit, but it won't be too long, and you'll be fishing still water for most of the summer.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love that boat. I got there's Townsend Marine over here that are awesome G3 dealer. They helped me out with the G3 program and stuff, and the boat is great. Just under 40 miles an hour in 4 inches of water. It's wild.
Man.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Huh.
It's not the best lake boat, I should, but the redneck in me, it's hard to get away from that.
So I know who to call when I draw that Missouri River sheep tag.
Oh,
That's
man.
where those boats, they just do so good running up that system up and through there. But yeah, you use it a lot for Stillwater. Man, you're dialed in on the Stillwater. There's so many guys floating the rivers out here. There's just as good a fishing in these lakes, isn't there?
There is. That's one that maybe I need to update my etiquette on. Maybe it's like changed a little bit, but God, I tend to get in quite a few arguments out there because I like go for the tranquility and stuff, and then both, if you're into fish on some of these lakes, holy cow, man, float tubes will be 10 feet away from you. And then like I had one where a guide boat like came up, 15 feet away from it, like a half a cast away from us.
Oh my gosh.
To like hit. Yeah, and
It's got to drive you nuts.
it's a little interesting, but the cool thing about the motor is like, you just back out, fire that thing up, and go find a new spot. So it's fun. It's really been a nice change. And when you get clients that can fish, because it's a different game, it's it's a bit like muskie fishing in the 0 to hero thing, but it's basically the most boring method of fishing you could ever imagine until everyone in the boat is just laughing with rods bent and these things just pulling off across the lake, just tearing line.
Gosh, and big fish in these lakes too. It's where they can really grow up. They have the food source in there.
Yeah, that's my one. My brother caught it 2 summers ago, 26-inch brown. That's the one that we've topped 25 with. And that thing ate a chironomid, which is, a big midge, big mosquito, basically, 4 inches off the bottom, sitting underneath a bobber with 3 kids in the boat, just, talking, not even really paying attention.
So that's like the most effective way, right? We throw streamers out there a bunch and we try to get them in. And we do get fish, but the most effective way is a nymph setup and running that stuff off the bottom, huh?
Yeah, and same, like, I feel like everyone's kind of looking for dry flies all the time because there's nothing more fun. And when the fish are on the calabatus in the lakes, it's the closest thing to saltwater fishing that I've ever experienced, where you're hunting an exact fish. Hopefully he's eating 8 or 9 times before he goes under, so his back's up and out of the water the whole time, cruising around inside of these weed beds. That being said, I got like 3 days on the lake where it was actually good, like where they were staying up. A lot of times they'll come from the bottom, like eat all the way up, break the surface, and go all the way back to the bottom, eating the whole time. So if you break out the slip bobber and you basically just sit there with the smart trolling motors and stuff now, you just press a spot lock and it holds you right where you're supposed to be. And yeah, you're basically just nymphing adrift. The wind's coming across the lake, or there's a current underneath and it's swinging you in. So you're trying to swing your flies. Right next to the weed beds, a good trick is put your forceps on your bottom fly and then mark the exact bottom depth. And then you can set that bottom fly, 3 to 6 inches off of it.
Okay, so you're taking it and you're hooking them to your bottom fly, and then you're dropping your line down until it hits the bottom, and then you're marking that distance, and you're putting your slip bobber 4 inches up from that, so it sits right on the bottom.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, 4 inches like towards the water, so that fly's sitting just off of it.
2 flies?
Yep, 2 flies.
Usually run like a bigger leech setup or something like that out front, something smaller in back.
I tend to like either throw leeches and almost like streamer fish for them, and just kind of bump them through with sinking line, or just go full on and just embrace the bobber. And that big chironomid like right off the bottom usually seems to be the ticket. In certain places where it's really deep, you can hang a balance leech off the bottom. And guys crush it. I tend to not do as well as when I'm stripping them, and I think it's just because I get impatient sitting there. But the man in lakes, Phil Rowley from Alberta, Canada, the guy's the man. He came down and did a fly demonstration here, and I showed him some spots. My boss is like, yeah, go show him around the lake. Like, he'll end up showing you what to do, but just show him the boat ramps and, like, a couple places you go. And we each took our own boat. And dude, I think he caught like 17 that I joke that like we would have killed taking pictures of. I mean, up to one that was massive, like 26, 27 inch,
You're
just
kidding.
stacked brown. And dude doesn't even take him out of the net. Like, he just like picked it up out of the net a little bit to show it to us and let it in. Yeah. And we're 2 guides that live there, and we caught 1 chub. And I had gone to his demonstration that day, or like his fly seminar thing, like an hour and a half long speech. And he's got all his slides, and I thought like his balance leeches were cool. I wrote down like a couple things. The next day, after getting it handed to us, I went in there with a notepad and pencil and wrote down everything that man had to say. And
Good on you.
Yeah, you got to respect your elders in certain places, and dude, that guy just smoked us.
Man.
Yeah, it was really cool.
What was he doing that was just so much experience on that water and knew the bugs to fish, even though he didn't know that still water specifically?
Yeah, and being patient. It's like, who's the best at staring at the bobber?
Okay.
In that kind of thing. Just like that when you're trying to really get it down deep and get that long drift, and it's just like he had faith. Like I think he finds the cruising zones, and that's what he did. He like kind of putted back and forth a couple times, looking at his sonar to one of the bays that I took him in, and I think he found like a little divot spot that was a little bit deeper. Set up, 2 drifts off of that, and just
wow. There's so much. There's much to reading lakes as there is reading rivers. Like you're always reading the water and the current and the depth and the structure on a river, and it's the same thing with a lake. You're doing it with your sonar, reading weed beds, and you're trying to find where these trout lunar through there, move through there, how they move through those bays, or how they travel looking for food, or how they travel on the weed beds.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think those big browns will like cruise around with their bellies touching the bottom. It's so cool. It's fun. It's like a needle in a haystack. And I got so into chasing these big brown trout that inevitably I wound up like looking in some small creeks, late season, like in some elk hunting spots and stuff. And it's like seeing these giant fish in these spots. And it's like, you're completely unethical to fish to them at those times. So it was, where are those fish coming from? And then it just got me it was like, all right, so like it's this giant vast space to go out and find them, but it's fun. It's like a needle in a haystack. And then like you said about everything, once you find them, they're there for a reason. It's just, recognizing what's going on, those bug hatches in the certain places in the lake. Our lakes are really cool because we've got thermal features coming in at certain spots. We've got super cold water coming in at certain spots. So like on a big lake, you'll have a 6-degree temperature swing just cruising across it, and then certain times in the summer in certain places, like you'll go into one of the Spring Creek mouths, and it'll drop 15 degrees. It's so cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, and it doesn't seem like everybody is as tapped into the still water. Like everybody goes down the river. There's a bunch of really good fishermen on the river that know those spots. It doesn't seem like there's as many guys, or is there just more space on the lake, more areas?
I think there's more space. I think that there's certain guys out there that hammer them and do really well. Gordon Patton, do you know Gordon?
I do know Gordon. I have some of his tie. I did a construction job for him.
Nice.
And he just ran me for the whole week I was down there and gave me flies and instructions on tying them. That guy's a stillwater maniac,
dude,
isn't he?
Yeah, he's the man. And yeah, was he an elk outfitter here for years too?
I think so.
And like, I don't think he's missed an elk in however many years of being here. Yeah, I think he's 83 maybe, and 2 years ago he did 102 days on the lakes. That guy's an animal.
The generations before us were sure a lot tougher, weren't they? Like, I mean, I look at what they do and what they're capable of. It's just wild. But yeah, that's a real man, isn't he?
We had a buddy that was glassing elk right as the sun was going down, kind of in a spot off the highway, and he's talking on the phone, and Gordon comes in there and the guy said that he thought Gordon was going to pull him out of his truck and beat him up. He was a 80-year-old guy, but just a stud. And he's like, "Who are you talking to? You can't be doing that." And that's because in Montana you can't have somebody glassing and then have cell phone communication with somebody that's up hunting. And so that's what he thought was going on. And he's like, "Who are you talking to?" And he's like, "I'm talking to my dad." He's like, "You tell him to get down here right now." He's like, "He's in Chicago."
They weren't doing anything but just glassing up on the hillside. But Gordon had it where they were CBing or radioing each other where the elk were. Exactly. And so he was down there to chew some ass.
Exactly. And it's just cool. You get these guys that like look out for the area.
Yeah, look out for the valley. That's totally awesome.
Yeah, that guy's a legend.
Oh, how cool. Yeah, he's a great guy. Gosh, I could listen to his stories and just gets him on the lake too. Man, yeah, he gave me some really good ties that still work for me.
Nice.
And I hike these things into a lot of high mountain lakes and stuff, some of his patterns that he gave me, and they all hold up in high mountain lakes. Like I'll use those over my own patterns.
Nice.
Yeah. Some weird he's got like a smaller leech that's got a red tail, and then a smaller leech with an orange tail.
Oh, yeah.
He likes both of those ones.
Yeah, we sell pretty much all those patterns down at the shop because that guy's the man. Mm-hmm. He comes in, he's like, he'll bring like a thing of dubbing up, kind of keep it hidden behind his hand, and then just like show it to certain people. And I'd be like, point at it and give you the thumbs up.
What a legend.
Yeah, that guy's awesome.
Yeah, how cool. Well, yeah, and fishing these lakes too, you do good out of the boat. You can also do good from the shore, especially as some of this ice is coming off right now. Man, it's good fishing out.
That's like the one that you don't even want to, like, that's the most fun thing you can do. And it's so hard to catch it.
It
know,
is.
And even now, like, I used to live so much closer, so I could literally look out my window and keep progress on the ice on the lake. And yeah, you catch it when you've got that like 10-foot swath that's melting off, and it's black with midges, and you throw a big streamer in, drop it off the ice, and it just gets dominated. It's so fun. There's no match the hatch about it. It's like, what's the biggest thing that I can make a disturbance with out there and get some attention?
Man, oh man. Yeah, timing for that should be pretty good right now for some of these high mountain lakes. It's just tough to keep tabs on, isn't it? Because you want that ice as it's melting from the banks where you can just reach in there and touch it.
Yeah, and I get scared of those big furry things around this time of year when they start coming out. I start hearing like more and more stories in some of these lakes that I've gone to fish early season, and I start getting a little bit panicky. But yeah, that one we did just up from here a couple years ago. We were the first set of footprints in there one year, and that was so cool. I mean, it was like cheating. It was awesome. It was literally every cast until it was time to go home.
Mm-hmm. It's always nice to fit in a couple of those days amongst the other days too, but you almost feel guilty when you get into them that good, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
like
yeah.
almost like you're getting a little evil with them. But it is, you go out so many days and don't catch them. It's like every once in a while you just time it right and have the right stuff and get them good.
Yeah, that's the guys talk about some of those horseback trips like into the park for fishing where they cut the hooks off. And that's just awesome.
It is.
Yeah, isn't that great? It's just no hooks, dry flies. Just getting them to come up and eat it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, those G-bears, they're a real concern around the rivers and around the lakes this time of year, especially when they're coming out. And, yeah, it's pretty gnarly when you run into tracks of them and you know they're around.
The tracks are always surprisingly so large, too. And just, man, they freak us out. And we're, like, basically in a neighborhood here. And I told you I still need to show you the pictures, but yeah, we had mountain lion tracks in the mud. 40 feet from behind our house, we've got an unfenced Great Pyrenees that roams the whole neighborhood. Everybody knows him, constantly barking. And that's a cat coming through when it can leave footprints in soft mud. So, middle of the day, late in the day. It's interesting. We're kind of on the edge of it here, Brian. I'm a little bit nervous.
Oh, man. Well, and the G-bears, like, there's attacks in this valley every year, multiple ones of them. It's just running into one of those things at the bad, in the wrong spot. And I always think, bears, they're not out hunting you or looking for you. They're minding their manners, but they have a temper on them. And when you get inside 100 yards on them, they have a fight or flight. And most of the time, they don't want anything to do with you. Some of the younger boars and things will be curious and kind of check you out. Most of them will run like a white-tailed deer. But every once in a while, you'll get that mom with cubs or get that, guarding a carcass or just a irritated bear.
Yeah.
And they decide to fight instead of flight. So I just always try to keep out of that 100 yards, that close proximity. But yeah, when you're paying attention to your flies and right on the river there, you could definitely have one sneak up on you.
We were talking about bull trout earlier before we tried this, and I had a buddy show us this area, and we were way back, and we're hiking in waders, and I think it was, say we were like 6 miles back, like waders on kind of like a horse outback fitting trail, and then drop down and we're fishing, and maybe 250 yards up in the scree field, there's a big sow just flipping over rocks. And it's like, we're just far enough back there, but like that we kind of just got there. And it's like, so like the idea was one person was going to keep their eyes on her the whole time and make sure. And man, we lost her so many times. It's like, oh God, where is she? Where is she? And it ended up being okay. But I sure like that time of year a lot more than that fall season with them. They just are so spooky.
Yeah, they're gnarly.
Yeah.
There's no need for Bigfoot around here. There's real monsters wandering around our woods.
Yeah, it's scary. And it's like, we've got guides. We had a guide that came from Alaska, and he was working for another outfitter, but living at the shop that I work for. And his first day into the park, did I tell you that a young grizzly comes out, a young male, and comes towards his clients, and he throws his net and his fishing rod over his head and starts screaming at it and runs right towards it. And it turns around and runs away. And he's like, I guided in Alaska for 2 years. And it's, what people don't realize is our bears don't have a renewable resource. Like, their renewable resource comes from people shooting elk. So, like, they, arguably kind of like the sound of gunshots. And, yeah, I think he told like a park ranger or something, and they just chewed into him. And like, you can't do that with these bears. You're gonna, yeah.
That's well, I'm buddies with Cole Kramer, and he's up in Alaska, and so he's up off Kodiak Island, and he guides all the bow hunters for the brown bears, the 1,500-pound to 2,000-pound brown bears. Like, he is the guy to archery hunt those, and he has to back those guys up with a rifle. He has to go in on wounded bears and go in on these brown bears. They're the the biggest brown bears on the face of the earth. And he had, he's got acquaintances down here, and I visit with him every now and again. And he tells me our bears are a different beast down here. He says, I don't like your bears down there. Like, he's backpacking and living on Kodiak with those giant brown bears, and he's scared of our Montana bears down here. Dude, I'm serious.
You're not making me want to go outside.
Well, and like, I get really comfortable being around them and being in country with them. Like, I feel really confident and comfortable. I trail run, all these things. But where I get nervous is when I start bringing my family up there, because then you're responsible for my girls and the whole. It's just like this added stress, and you want to take them to the wilderness and to these places, but you're definitely like you definitely want to be safe, and I'll take them to mountain ranges where I know there aren't grizzly bears way before I take them, backpacking back into these. And we've done it before, but it just makes me nervous.
It's kind of funny. You're like, long before I'll go for a walk outside of my house.
yeah.
I'll take them across the state where there's not as many bears.
Oh, man. I mean, there's some mountain ranges around here where I know we're not going to run into them and things. But, yeah, I mean, it's definitely on your mind all the time, and it has to be with fishing these lakes and even these rivers now. Some of these rivers, like up there, northern Montana, man, oh man, that seems sketchy on some of those rivers. Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're so close to the park, and obviously we choose to put ourselves here, but we're basically at like the mouth of the grizzly bear hatchery. we're trying to go about doing our things. And it's like,
we really are.
It's kind of only a matter of time.
Yeah, I hope not. But yeah, I mean, it is like Todd Orr got attacked on the trail right across the valley right there. I ran that trail 20 times that summer. I know the exact spot.
Yeah, that's the view out of my house. It's the view out of your house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, it's just wild. The guy definitely has to look out. But it is cool though that we do have them, or that you can see them, or there are some cool parts about the West is just still a wild place. Yeah,
I think it was the first time you were talking about up between the lakes. It was the first time I went fishing with my boss, and he has like a little 32 or something, right? And he was like, I don't know if he was like moving it somewhere in the shop and putting it away, but I just saw him like with this little 32, and we were about to go fishing, and I started making fun of him. I'm like, what are you gonna do with that? And he's like, he just looks at me stone face. He's like, all it's got to do is slow you down. It's like, oh, well, that would be very effective at that, I guess.
Between the real old timers, or between the real men in here in town, like, you'll get a few off-color jokes like that as you're going around, and you don't know if they're being serious or if they're joking with you sometimes.
No, I'm pretty sure if it came down to it, he was dead serious. He had things to get done.
Well, I mean, it's just something we have to deal with. Hopefully we'll be able to pass some laws to help control their numbers a little bit, because it does seem like you were asking me earlier. It does seem like we're just getting more and more of them. Like, black bears seem like a sustained number, but definitely seeing more G bears around and more conflict with users, which is dangerous.
Well, and that's like you were talking about going to mountain ranges. We went for a spring trip last year to somewhere where I'd never heard of grizzlies being, right? And I was going with my wife, and right before we're gonna go, she like Googles it, and then it comes up. It was like, grizzly kills 131 sheep, like rampage, and it was like this random, young male that had just gone for a walkabout and had just kept on walking until he got himself into trouble. And like, I mean, at least he went out happy. Like, that must have been the funnest time for that bear ever. But got in and did serious damage, and then that's coming back from a taxpayer point of view, and it's like a funny story, but that's a big conflict, and I think that's happening a lot more. It's funny who you run into too. Like, we were in Bozeman shopping in kind of like the hippie grocery store, and there's like a rancher, guy that didn't really like fit in, so I struck up a conversation. Sure enough, he raises all the beef for the grocery store, but he raises them up in the Tom Minor,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, talk about like stories, and holy cow, that man was awesome.
Man,
Yeah.
how cool. What a small world of people you run into. Yeah,
Yeah.
I messed around a lot in that Tom Miner, and it is full of them.
Yeah, that's just like the bear box.
Oh, it is the bear box. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've got some friends that guide in the park, and it's amazing. Like, clients want to go see grizzly bears in the park, and it's like they're there on command now, for sure. I feel like when I first got out here, in the springtime, if people saw grizzly bears, it was like what we talked about all day, right? And it was like that's so cool. You're so lucky to have seen these things. And now it was like almost every group that came early saw cubs last year in the park. And that, take that scientific data for what it's worth. But that's just what's running through my boat. And, a guy can.
It's good bro science.
Yeah,
I think,
right?
I
There
think
you
it's
go.
spot on. Yeah. There is getting more and more of them. Like you say, it's getting normal. Yeah. It's a part of everyday life for us that live here, for sure. We're just lucky we don't see them too much down in the valley bottom down there. Although they are getting into that valley bottom where you never know. You could be walking through the grass to try to get to a hole and jump one up down there.
Yeah, our buddy was parked kind of on the upper, and I mean, where they would be, like still in the, above the cottonwoods. And they walked into a spot, and they, I think they went in, pretty early, and they were in there for like 3 or 4 hours, and came back there, and there was a note on his truck that said the scratches are from a grizzly bear and her cub. And
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was like all it said. And he's like, oh, great. And there were like, scratches all over around his camper shell on his truck.
Well, in life in general, you just got to have your wits about you. Anywhere you go, you got to be prepared to handle the situation. Like even driving down the highway, you got to be prepared if a wreck happens, what you're going to do, where's your lights, where's your caution lights. Same thing in a drift boat. Like you have to be so cognizant of the river accidents can happen so quick. Well, and bears for that matter, and even other wildlife, like you had that moose like a couple years ago that had you trapped from your boat, right?
Oh, man. And then like an idiot, I went and got my boat still. Because that's like town moose, like we're really close. But I videoed the whole thing because I didn't know how it was going to go. And he was all good until I got up. I kind of pulled my anchor from being outside of my boat and pulled it away. He was just on the edge of a willow patch, and then there was maybe 30 feet of grass on the edge of the island over to where he was on the edge of these willows. And I pull my boat away from it, get the anchor in, jump in the boat, and then as the boat hit the current, the anchor kind of swung and made a noise against the boat. And that thing, he cleared like 10 or 15 feet, jumping to the side, and swung his massive head to where he's just got that one big eye like facing right at me, and he's like down in that stance where it's like, to come to him, you got to go through his head. And yeah, man. It was interesting.
Dude, there's a lot of guys that are more scared of moose than they are grizzly bears just because they're so tall and they can stomp with those front feet. Those things are gnarly.
Yeah, for sure. I've come eye to eye with him way too many times. And luckily, calves. But the one, like my wife and I were floating super early, and they used to close this top stretch of the river. And so it was like right when they opened it, we floated in, took a tiny little left channel that, nobody ever really goes down anyway. And this calf is just right in the middle. Like he's like wobbly legged. It's so shallow. It's kind of one of those spots where you basically bump your boat getting through. And he's like right on the gravel bar on the edge, still wobbly kneed with a collar on already. But like mom's nowhere in sight. And she's around. The thickest patch of willows is on like the opposite side of the channel, on the opposite side of us. And it was interesting. And little man like walks up till he gets like across from our boat and just like looks at us and pees like right next to us. And oh man, it was definitely, you knew mom was in there somewhere. And your little low side Clackacraft drift boat, I don't think is going to keep him out so well.
Man, that's it. Well, it's still an adventure everywhere you go out here, and you got to be ready for it. Whether it's like I say, the water or a drift boat, man, things can get out of hand so quick. Just on any of these rivers, and the Madison's pretty safe, but there's a lot of rocks to dodge and things, and you could get hung up. But some of these rivers are dangerous,
Yeah.
A big hole, and yeah, you got to watch out for what channels you're going down, if your boat can go down. We joked the other day floating down, hey, you want to take that left channel, and that left channel takes you all the way to the backside through fences and through a spillway. I swear to you, I saw a couple boats come out of there before the spillway when I waded up it a couple years ago. But.
Yeah, I told you, we know the guy that did it twice by accident. He said, well, and then he said the fishing was stupendous. It's like, well, it only sees about 3 boats a year, and one of them was yours twice.
Yeah. Oh, man. During the hatch, that place is just gold in there.
Yeah.
That'd be the time to do it. High water, got a good hatch.
Yeah, I bet it would be really cool in there. It's and that's what's so wild is there's so much of that stuff everywhere around here, and it's just which way to go. But all these springs that come up, it's interesting when you get to one that's dry, and you wonder what that thing would have been like before they diverted all the water away from it to go somewhere else.
That's true too.
Yeah.
Well, and I always struggle with, like, there's good known holes that holds 100 fish, down below. And you fish to those holes and you try to pick up fish. But just like I was telling you yesterday, I went down to that great big hole and fished that thing both sides. I swung it, I nymphed it. I never touched a fish in that big hole. And then roll right to, like, a spot that goes down where not every boat goes down, and it was kind of shaved, and it's just like, man, that looks like the right type of water. And then all of a sudden hook a bunch in that spot, like
nice.
just to channel off. So there's just multiple schools of thought, isn't there? Fish in the big holes where there's fish, but also like walking over these little channels and things. And some of them are only as wide as the boat, but you can walk over through public land or up the high water. Some of those things in the summertime, when they haven't been hit, they're just full of fish in there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like, it's just so fun too. It's something about going and finding the spot that's not like a named run.
Yes.
And it's so many of these rivers. Like we went over to the big one to the east, and it's just every run's got a name. And I kind of took pride on finding those fish on just some random willow bank, that wasn't something famous. And it's really cool. It's like they're everywhere at certain times. Like when you find that feature, they're there. Mm-hmm. But this river, more than any other one, like you see them move around down in these holes down towards town. It's interesting. Like you said, because I floated, 2 days before that, and it was just on fire in there. It was fish after fish after fish. And then you're talking about a spot that is 100 yards downriver and off a little side channel that was holding them a couple days later. So it's definitely it's interesting how they run around, but sometimes you look at it and I feel like that run is just like a mini version of the big run.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just a tiny to scale, like what of that one, like a 1/60th the time.
Oh, it just has that nervous chop and depth to it right through there. But yeah, I guess a lot like the inside of the rock side of it. Yeah, same thing.
That jiggly water.
Yeah, they like it. Well, man, thanks so much for being on, man. I sure appreciate it. So where can guys get a hold of you?
So I work for the Slide In primarily. I'm my own outfitter this year. The Slide In's down in Cameron. I'll do my own trips as well, but they can find me on Instagram at Buff Shoals, BuffShoals. Yeah, and we're here all the time.
Yeah, well, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy fishing with you and your knowledge on the river. It's just a blast. You're fun to hang out with. I knew you'd be great on the podcast, so thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Well, anytime you want me to ramble around in this. Yeah, let's go fishing.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Fun podcast with Charlie. We went out after the podcast. He hooked 3 on that streamer rod early spring. So like I say, he's just a fishy guy. He's always into some good trout. Just experience is the best teacher. And when you spend that many days on the water, you just pick up things and spend that much time around good fishermen. And so, yeah, just great to have the conversation. I'm really enjoying this fly fishing side of things. I've been fishing like a madman. It was out Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I've been getting them to eat the olive streamer really good. Fishing that new stick of mine. I got a new stick with a good the Airflow Max line on it. Man, that thing will shoot a streamer. And it's getting down to a good depth. And really like looking at the water different and fishing these big runs and swinging it down through and really like getting out and working the run where, fish streamers a bunch before, and it's really fun out of a drift boat when you're tossing towards the bank and stripping in. But it's also fun to get out those big runs and work them all the way down every section of it and just see if there's a great big one laying in there. So yeah, I've had fun doing that. Also been floating the lower section and just been a bunch of fish down there. So yeah, it's been fun. Fish Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Been drifting with my daughters a bunch. Drifting solo, trying to get some after work action in. So, yeah, it's been good. Looking forward to this weekend, then supposed to cool down again. But really enjoying this fly fishing side of things, guys. So, I've got some great episodes to release to you. Make sure you rate and subscribe to the podcast. That really helps me out. And we'll keep this thing rolling. So check in with you guys next week.